The Qatari patrol vessel Zintra moved slowly through the empty stretch of space near the Viridian Expanse. This area was known for being quiet. No stars close enough to give light, no planets, no signals. Most ships avoided it. But the Zintra was not like most ships. It belonged to the Qatari Collective, a strict and orderly society that believed in watching every corner of known space, even the forgotten ones. Inside the ship, Lieutenant Vex sat in the command chair. His long, segmented limbs tapped gently against the armrests as he watched the sensor screen. His dark, multifaceted eyes caught every flicker of data. Beside him stood Ensign Lyra, younger and still learning the ways of deep patrol duty. She kept her antennae low, focused, trying not to show her boredom. Then, without warning, a soft chime broke the silence. Vex's head tilted. "What is that?" Lyra checked her panel. "Unknown energy signature, very weak. Coming from sector G7. G7 is empty," Vex said. "Not anymore," Lyra replied. Vex gave the order to adjust course. The Zintra turned smoothly, its smooth black hull gliding through the void like a shadow. After a few hours, they found it, a small escape pod tumbling slowly, its outer shell scorched and cracked. No identification marks, no active comms, just a metal shell drifting in the dark. Vex hesitated. Protocol was clear. Unknown life forms must be quarantined. No contact, no rescue. The Qatari had learned long ago that mercy could bring danger. But something about the pod felt wrong. Too small, too fragile. It didn't look like the work of any known spacefaring race. "Scan for life signs," Vex said. Lyra ran the scan. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "One life form, humanoid, weak pulse. Oxygen levels critical," Vex stood. "Human?" Lyra nodded. "Genetic match to Earth-origin species, but Earth vanished from galactic records over 300 cycles ago." Vex knew the history. Earth had been listed as a pre-warp civilization, barely capable of leaving its own moon. Then, without warning, all signals from that system stopped. No distress call, no war, just silence. Most assumed the planet had destroyed itself or been wiped out by some unknown force, and yet, here was a human, alone in a broken pod, floating in a part of space no human should have reached. Vex made a decision. "Bring it aboard. Full quarantine field. I'll oversee the recovery." Lyra blinked in surprise but obeyed. The Zintra extended its retrieval arm and gently captured the pod. Inside the medical bay, sealed behind energy barriers, they opened the hatch. The human inside was young, maybe in his early 20s by Earth standards. His skin was pale, his lips cracked, and his dark hair matted with sweat and grime. He wore a torn flight suit with faded patches. One arm was wrapped in a makeshift bandage. He didn't move as they lifted him onto a medical slab. The ship's med unit scanned him. Radiation exposure, dehydration, minor fractures, but alive. Over the next few days, the human remained unconscious. Vex visited often, watching through the quarantine glass. He had never seen a human up close. They were smaller than Qatari, softer with round eyes and smooth skin. Fragile. Yet this one had survived weeks in deep space with almost no supplies. That took something more than luck. On the fourth day, the human stirred. His eyes opened, brown, wide, confused. He tried to sit up, then winced and fell back. Lyra entered the room, holding a nutrient injector. She moved slowly, not wanting to frighten him. The human looked at her, then at the strange walls, the glowing panels, the alien air. Fear flickered in his eyes, but only for a moment. Then he gave a weak nod. Lyra offered the injector. He took it with trembling fingers and pressed it to his neck. The fluid hissed into his veins. Color returned to his face. Later, through a translator pad, he spoke his first words. "Thank you." His name was Kyle. He didn't say much else at first. Just ate, slept, and watched. But he noticed things. When Lyra left a cup of water near his bed, he drank it slowly, then placed it carefully back on the tray. When Vex came to check on him, Kyle tried to sit straighter as if showing respect. One evening, Kyle pulled a small object from his pocket, a broken wristband with a faded Earth symbol. He held it out to Lyra. She took it gently, turning it over in her claws. It meant nothing to her, but she saw how much it meant to him. She placed it on the shelf beside his bed. Another time, while resting, Kyle began to hum. It was a simple tune, soft and sad. Lyra stood outside the door, listening. She had never heard music like that. No rhythm, no harmonics, just a single voice carrying something quiet and human. Days passed. Kyle grew stronger. He started walking short distances, then helped clean his room, even though he didn't need to. He asked simple questions. What star is that? How long until we reach your home? Do you have families? The Qatari were not used to such questions. Their society was built on duty, not personal bonds. But Kyle's curiosity wasn't pushy. It was gentle, honest. Vex found himself thinking about Earth more often. If this human could be so kind, so grateful after everything he'd been through, what did that say about his people? Had the galaxy been wrong about them all along? One night, Kyle sat by the observation window, staring at the stars. Vex joined him, standing a few steps away. You saved me, Kyle said quietly. I won't forget that. Vex didn't know how to respond. Qatari didn't speak of feelings. But he nodded once. Kyle smiled. It was small but real. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. But inside the Zintra, something had changed. A human had drifted into their world, broken and alone, and instead of turning him away, they had helped. Now they were beginning to wonder what kind of species could produce someone like Kyle, and what might happen if Earth was not gone after all. The ship sailed on, carrying its strange passenger deeper into Qatari space. No one knew what waited ahead. But for the first time in centuries, the Qatari were curious about a world they thought had vanished. And Kyle, though still weak, felt a quiet hope. He was alive. He was safe. And maybe, just maybe, he would see home again. Kyle spent his days walking the quiet halls of the Zintra, always careful not to go where he wasn't allowed. The Qatari crew watched him at first, unsure what to make of a human moving among them. But he never caused trouble. He asked before touching anything. He smiled when someone passed him in the corridor. Slowly, the crew stopped seeing him as a threat and started seeing him as just Kyle. Vex still checked on him every few cycles, not out of duty alone, but because he wanted to understand. One afternoon, he found Kyle sitting in the small lounge near the medical bay, tracing shapes on a data slate with his finger. The screen showed a star map, but not one the Qatari used. It was different, marked with names like Orion and Sirius, labels Vex had only seen in old trade logs. Those are your stars, Vex said, standing behind him. Kyle turned, surprised but not startled. Yeah, these are the ones I grew up with. My dad used to point them out from our backyard. Vex tilted his head. You lived on a planet's surface? Most humans do, Kyle said with a small laugh. We don't all live on ships. That surprised Vex. The Qatari had lived in orbital hives for generations. The idea of walking under open sky, breathing unfiltered air, seemed dangerous, even foolish. But Kyle spoke of it like it was normal, like it was good. Over the next few days, Kyle began to share more, not all at once, but in pieces, like someone testing if the ground would hold his weight. He told them about Earth, not just the cities or the oceans, but the smell of rain, the sound of birds at dawn, the way sunlight felt on your skin after a long winter. Lyra listened more than anyone. She started bringing him small things, a cup of warm nutrient broth, a soft blanket, a stylus so he could draw. In return, Kyle taught her simple English words. Hello. Thank you. Friend. She practiced them quietly when no one else was around. One evening, as the ship drifted through a calm sector, Kyle sat with Lyra in the observation nook. He sketched constellations on a scrap of recycled panel, his hand steady now. Lyra watched, her antennae twitching with interest. That one, she said, pointing to a cluster of dots, is called the Hunter in our records. We call it Orion, Kyle said. There's a story about him. A great hunter who walked the sky. Lyra was silent for a moment. We do not tell stories about stars. We chart them. We measure their heat, their distance, their usefulness. Kyle looked at her. Maybe that's why your sky feels so empty. She didn't answer right away. But later, she asked him to tell her the story of Orion. He did in his soft voice, adding details about the scorpion, the belt of stars, the chase that never ended. Lyra listened until the lights dimmed for night cycle. Meanwhile, Vex grew more uneasy. Kyle's knowledge didn't match what the Qatari archives said about humans. Earth was supposed to be primitive, barely spacefaring, no unified government, no deep space capability. Yet Kyle spoke of quantum comms, fusion drives, and orbital defense grids like they were everyday things. He mentioned a ship called the Odyssey, a civilian science vessel that had traveled beyond the Kuiper Belt to study gravitational ripples near a dead star. That was impossible. Or it should have been. Vex pulled up the old records again. Earth's last known signal was a broken transmission from a low-orbit satellite over 300 years ago. After that, nothing. No expansion, no contact. The galaxy assumed the species had collapsed, but Kyle was real. His pod was real, and the tech inside it, though damaged, was far more advanced than anything Earth should have had. One night, Vex confronted him. "How did you get so far from Earth?" Vex asked, standing in the doorway of Kyle's room. Kyle looked up from his sketching. The Odyssey was on a deep-range mission. We were mapping space-time folds near the edge of human territory. Something went wrong. A swarm of drones, self-replicating fast, smart, attacked us. They weren't ours. We didn't build them. Who did? Vex asked. I don't know. But they tore through our shields like paper. The captain gave the order to abandon ship. I got into the last pod, watched the Odyssey break apart. Kyle's voice dropped. I was the only one who made it out. Vex studied him. There was no pride in Kyle's words, only grief. And truth, but something still didn't fit. If Earth had ships like the Odyssey, why did you vanish from galactic records? Kyle hesitated. Then he said, We didn't vanish. We chose to go quiet. Vex leaned forward. Explain. About 280 years ago, Earth almost died. Not from war, from something worse. A bioengineered plague, then a solar flare that fried half our satellites. Millions died. Governments fell. For a while, we couldn't even talk to each other across oceans, let alone stars. He paused, eyes distant. But we rebuilt, slowly, quietly. We didn't want attention. Not after what happened. So we stopped broadcasting, stopped reaching out. We focused on healing, on uniting. By the time we were ready to return to the stars, no one remembered us. Vex was silent. It made sense. Too much sense. A species that survived disaster, chose silence over noise, and returned stronger. That wasn't weakness. That was wisdom. Still, doubt lingered. Why should I believe you? Kyle didn't get angry. He just reached into his pocket and pulled out a small chip. Black, smooth, no markings. This is a backup from the Odyssey's core log. It's encrypted, but if you have a quantum decoder, you can read the last entries. You'll see the drones. You'll see the coordinates. You'll see me? Vex took the chip. He didn't trust it yet, but he trusted Kyle's eyes. There was no lie there. The next day, Vex ran the chip through the ship's decoder. The files were damaged, but enough remained. Video logs showed the Odyssey's bridge. Humans in uniforms, calm until the alarms blared. Then chaos. Then static. The final entry was time-stamped just 6 weeks ago. Earth was not only alive, it was exploring. And someone or something was hunting its ships. Vex called a private meeting with Lyra. We need to find where the Odyssey was destroyed, he said. Lyra's antennae rose in alarm. That's deep in uncharted space. And if those drones are still there, we owe him this, Vex interrupted. He told us the truth. Now we must act on it. Lyra nodded slowly. The collective will not approve. Then we won't ask, Vex said. That night, Kyle noticed the ship had changed course. He found Vex on the bridge. Where are we going? Kyle asked. To find your ship, Vex replied. Kyle's breath caught. Why? Because if those drones are still out there, they might attack others. And because you saved us once, even if you don't remember. Kyle frowned. I didn't save anyone. Vex looked at him. You showed us that humans are not what we thought. That is a kind of saving. Kyle didn't know what to say, so he just nodded. The Zintra sped toward the last known location of the Odyssey, its engines humming with purpose. Inside, Kyle felt a mix of fear and hope. He didn't expect to find survivors. But maybe he could find answers. Maybe he could honor his crew. And maybe, just maybe, he could help the Qatari see that Earth was not a ghost, but a home worth protecting. The Zintra dropped out of warp near the coordinates Kyle had given. Space here was not empty like the Viridian expanse. It was littered with debris, twisted metal, shattered solar panels, frozen droplets of coolant that glittered like broken glass in the dim starlight. This was where the Odyssey had died. Kyle stood on the bridge beside Vex, his hands clenched at his sides. He didn't speak. He just stared at the wreckage floating in silence. It was worse than he remembered. The main hull was split in two, the command tower gone. No escape pods remained, no bodies. Just ruin. Lyra worked the sensors, her claws moving fast over the console. No life signs. But I'm picking up residual energy from the drone swarm. It's faint but recent. Vex's voice was low. They're still here. Kyle swallowed. They hunt in packs. They learn. If they see a new ship, they'll come. We're not defenseless, Vex said, though his posture stiffened. The Zintra moved slowly through the field of wreckage, scanning for anything useful. Kyle watched the view screen, his eyes catching on a familiar shape. A piece of the Odyssey's science lab still intact. Inside, maybe, was the data core. If they could recover it, Earth might learn what the drones were and where they came from. Can we send a retrieval drone? Kyle asked. Vex nodded. One. Quietly. The small drone launched from the Zintra's belly, gliding toward the lab fragment. It latched on, cut through the hull, and began pulling out the core unit. Everything was going smoothly, until the drone's cutter sparked against a hidden power line. That spark was enough. From the dark side of a broken fuel tank, something moved. Then another. Then dozens. Small, black insect-like machines unfolded from hiding, their surfaces shifting like liquid metal. They didn't fly, they swarmed fast and silent, drawn to the energy like moths to flame. Drones. Lyra shouted, "Pull the drone back," Vex ordered, too late. The swarm hit the retrieval unit like a wave. It shattered in seconds. The drones turned toward the Zintra. Ray shields. Full power to engines, Vex said, his voice calm but urgent. The Zintra's shields flared to life just as the first drones struck. They didn't explode. They clung. Dozens of them latched onto the hull, drilling, scanning, adapting. The ship shuddered as systems began to flicker. They're hacking our outer network, Lyra said, her voice tight. Shields at 80%. 70. Vex tried evasive maneuvers, but the drones were too fast. More poured from hidden pockets in the wreckage, hundreds now, maybe thousands. They'd been waiting, feeding, learning. Kyle watched, heart pounding. He knew this pattern. The Odyssey had lasted only 12 minutes against them. The Zintra was tougher, but not by much. Then he saw something. On the sensor display, the drones were syncing to a single frequency, a control pulse repeating every few seconds. It was how they stayed coordinated. If that pulse broke even for a moment, they'd go blind. I need access to the comms array, Kyle said suddenly. Vex turned. What? Their control signal, it's on a narrow band. If I can jam it with a corrupted Earth protocol, they'll lose sync. You don't know our systems, Lyra said. I've been studying them, Kyle replied. I've watched you run diagnostics. I know where the auxiliary console is. Vex hesitated only a second. Go. Kyle ran. He knew the ship better than he let on. He'd walked its halls for weeks, memorizing layouts, listening to crew talk about system layouts. He reached the engineering bay and found the backup comms terminal, a small panel near the coolant lines. His fingers flew over the keys. He didn't have clearance, but he'd noticed a flaw in the security, a gap between maintenance mode and emergency override. He used it. The screen flickered, then accepted his input. He pulled up the comms module and began typing fast. He didn't have the full anti-swarm code, the Odyssey's version was too large, but he remembered a fragment. A looped sequence designed to confuse self-replicating AI by feeding it false replication commands. It wasn't perfect, but it might buy time. On the bridge, alarms blared. Shields at 30%, Lyra cried. Hull breach in Sector 4. Vex gripped the armrests. Where is he? Then the comms channel crackled. Kyle's voice came through, strained but clear. Sending pulse now. A burst of static filled the ship. On the view screen, the drones froze. For a heartbeat, they hung in place, then scattered, bumping into each other, firing at nothing. The control pulse was broken. Shields holding, Lyra said, stunned. They're confused. Get us out of here, Vex ordered. The Zintra turned hard and fired its engines. Debris flew past as the ship shot away from the swarm. Behind them, the drones slowly reformed, but too late. The Zintra jumped to warp before they could follow. Silence returned to the bridge. Vex let out a slow breath. Lyra slumped in her chair, exhausted. Minutes later, Kyle walked onto the bridge. His face was pale, his hands shaking, but he stood tall. Vex looked at him. You saved us. Kyle shook his head. I just gave them a headache. They'll figure it out soon. But you gave us a chance, Vex said. That is more than we had. Lyra stood and walked over to Kyle. She placed a claw gently on his shoulder, a rare gesture among Qatari. You fought for us. Even though we are not your people, Kyle met her eyes. You helped me when I had nothing. That makes you my people too. The ship drifted in warp space, safe for now. But everyone knew the drones were still out there. And they would be back. Vex made a decision. We can't go home yet. Not with this threat loose, Lyra nodded. The collective must be warned. And Earth, Kyle added softly. They need to know the drones are active again. Vex looked at him. How? Kyle thought for a moment. Then he smiled faintly. There's a relay station, near the edge of human space. I helped build it. It's old, but it still works. If I send a coded signal with my sister's private key, she'll know it's me. Your sister? Lyra asked. Lena, she's in charge of Earth's deep space response now. If anyone can act, it's her. Vex considered this. Contacting Earth was risky. The Qatari had no formal ties to them. But after what Kyle had done, it felt right. Do it, Vex said. Later in the comms room, Kyle typed out a short message, just a few lines. His ID code, the drone signature, the coordinates, and one word at the end, help. He pressed send. The signal shot out into the void, writing an old frequency only Earth would recognize. He didn't know if it would reach her. He didn't know if she'd believe it. But he had to try. As he walked back to his room, he passed Vex in the corridor. Thank you, Vex said simply. Kyle nodded. We're in this together now. Outside, the stars blurred past in streaks of light. The Zintra was damaged, tired, but alive. And for the first time, Kyle didn't feel like a guest. He felt like part of the crew. The drones were still out there. The danger wasn't over. But they had struck back once. And that meant they could do it again. Weeks passed. The Zintra limped through quiet space, its hull patched with emergency sealant, its engines running at half power. Repairs were slow, but the crew worked without complaint. Kyle helped where he could, rewiring damaged circuits, cleaning filters, even learning to read Qatari maintenance codes. He no longer needed a translator for basic tasks. He and Lyra had developed their own mix of gestures and broken words that worked better than formal speech. Vex watched him closely. Kyle never asked to go home. He never complained about the food, the cold air, or the strange hum of the ship's core. He just worked. But Vex saw the way Kyle sometimes stared out the observation window, his eyes distant, as if listening for a voice only he could hear. Then one morning, the long-range sensors screamed. Lyra shot upright in her chair. Massive warp signature incoming. Multiple contacts, too many to count. Vex was on his feet instantly. Hostile? Lyra's claws flew over the console. Unknown origin, but the energy pattern? It matches Kyle's pod. Kyle, who had been in the mess hall, ran to the bridge. He stopped in the doorway, breathless. What is it? Something's coming, Vex said. On the main screen, space itself seemed to tear open. One ship emerged first, sleek, silver with smooth lines and glowing blue thrusters. Then another. And another. Soon the void was filled with vessels of all sizes, from small fighters to massive carriers, all bearing the same symbol on their hulls. A blue circle with a white continent inside. Earth's fleet. Kyle's knees nearly gave out. He gripped the doorframe to stay standing. At the front of the formation, the largest ship slowed and hailed the Zintra. A voice came through the comms, clear, calm, and familiar. This is Admiral Lena Carter of the United Earth Defense Fleet. Please respond, Zintra. Kyle's throat tightened. He hadn't heard his sister's voice in over a year. Vex looked at him. Do you know her? Kyle nodded. She's my sister. Vex opened the channel. This is Lieutenant Vex of the Qatari patrol vessel Zintra. We receive you, Admiral. A pause. Then Lena's voice softened. Is my brother with you? He is, Vex said. He is safe. On the view screen, the image shifted. A woman appeared, mid-30s, dark hair pulled back, eyes sharp but warm. She looked tired but relieved. Behind her, the bridge of the UES Vanguard hummed with quiet activity. Kyle, she said. You're alive! Kyle stepped forward, his voice rough. Hey, Lena, she smiled just a little. You always did find trouble. Then her expression turned serious. We got your signal. We traced the drone signature. The High Council voted within the hour. We're here to help, Vex frowned. Help how? Lena's gaze shifted to him. Earth doesn't forget those who protect its people. You saved my brother. You stood against a threat that hunts our ships. That makes you allies in our eyes, she paused. We've brought repair drones, medical supplies, and engineers. We'll fix your ship, no cost. No strings, Vex was silent. The Qatari did not accept gifts. They traded. They bargained, but this was something else, Kyle spoke up. They mean it, Vex. Earth doesn't do things halfway when it comes to gratitude. Lena nodded. And we'd like to talk. About the drones. About what happened to the Odyssey. And about building a real connection between our worlds. Vex looked at Kyle, then at Lyra. Both gave small nods. Very well, Vex said. We accept your aid. Within hours, Earth shuttles docked with the Zintra. Human engineers in blue uniforms floated through the halls, respectful, quiet, asking permission before touching anything. They worked side by side with Qatari technicians, sharing tools, sharing data, sharing smiles when something finally clicked into place. Lena came aboard herself. She hugged Kyle tightly the moment she saw him, something that made the nearby Qatari stiffen in surprise. Physical contact between non-mates was rare in their culture, but Lena didn't care. She held her brother like she might never let go. Later, she met with Vex and Lyra in the ship's conference room. She placed a small data crystal on the table. This contains everything we know about the drone swarm, she said. Their origin is still unknown, but they've attacked 3 more Earth vessels since the Odyssey. We think they're drawn to advanced AI or quantum signatures. Vex studied the crystal. Why show us this? Because you've seen them up close, Lena said. And because Kyle told me how you treated him. Not as a specimen, not as a burden, but as a person. She leaned forward. Earth went quiet for a long time. We learned the hard way that isolation doesn't keep you safe. It just makes you lonely. Now we're ready to reach out again, but only to those who show us kindness. Vex absorbed her words. For the first time, he understood why Kyle was the way he was. Earth hadn't just survived. It had chosen to remember what mattered. Over the next few days, the Zintra transformed. Damaged panels were replaced. Power flow stabilized. The air smelled less of ozone and more of clean filters. Kyle walked with Lena through the halls, showing her where he'd slept, where he'd drawn stars, where he'd first spoken to Lyra. She's like you, Lena said quietly, watching Lyra help an engineer reroute a coolant line. Quiet but strong. She saved me, Kyle said. More than once, Lena nodded. Then we owe her too. Before the fleet prepared to leave, Lena held a small ceremony on the Zintra's main deck. She presented Vex with a formal data crystal, this one containing Earth's full cultural archive, language databases, and a proposal for a diplomatic exchange. This isn't just thanks, she said. It's an invitation to know us, to stand with us. Vex accepted it with both hands, a sign of deep respect among the Qatari. That night, Kyle stood with Lena on the observation deck. The Earth fleet glowed outside, a sea of lights in the dark. You don't have to come back with us, do you? She asked. Kyle shook his head. Not yet. They need someone who understands both worlds, and I think I belong here for now. Lena smiled. Dad would be proud of you. They stood in silence, watching the stars. Far below, on the bridge of the Zintra, Vex and Lyra watched the fleet prepare for departure. For the first time, the Qatari did not feel alone in the galaxy. They had faced a threat, been saved by a human, and now been honored by an entire world. And as the Earth ships powered up their engines ready to return home, the Zintra no longer felt like just a patrol vessel. It felt like the beginning of something new. The Earth fleet formed up in perfect lines, their engines glowing a soft blue against the black. They didn't leave in a rush. They waited as if giving the Zintra time to say goodbye. On the bridge, Vex stood tall, his usual stillness replaced by something quieter, respect. Lyra stood beside him, her antennae raised, watching the humans move with calm purpose. Kyle stood near the viewport, his hands in his pockets. He wasn't wearing his old flight suit anymore. The Qatari had given him a simple gray tunic, stitched to fit his frame. It felt strange at first, but now it felt right, like he belonged. Lena walked up beside him. She didn't speak for a while. Just watched the stars with him. You sure about this? She finally asked. Kyle nodded. I need to stay. Not just for them, for us. Earth went quiet for so long that the galaxy forgot who we are. But the Qatari saw me. They helped me. Now they're willing to listen. That's a chance we can't waste, Lena smiled. You always did see the best in people. Even when they're not people, Kyle said with a small laugh. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a small device. Flat, silver, no bigger than a coin. This is a direct link to Earth Command encrypted. Only you and I can open it. If you need anything, supplies, data, backup, just press it. We'll come. Kyle took it and slipped it into his pocket. Thanks. She hugged him again, quick but firm. Then she turned and walked back to the shuttle bay without looking back. Kyle knew she did that on purpose. Goodbyes were easier that way. As the last Earth shuttle detached and flew toward the Vanguard, the Zintra's comms chimed. A final message from Lena. Take care of them, Kyle, and let them take care of you. Then the fleet powered up. One by one, the ships vanished into warp, leaving only ripples in space behind. Silence returned to the Zintra. But it wasn't the old silence, the empty kind. This silence felt full, like something had changed inside the ship, inside its crew. Over the next few weeks, life settled into a new rhythm. Kyle no longer stayed in the guest quarters. He moved into a small cabin near engineering, where he could help with repairs and study Qatari systems. He started teaching basic Earth history to interested crew members. In return, Lyra taught him how to read harmonic glyphs, the Qatari way of writing music, law, and memory all in one. Vex began sending reports to the Qatari collective, not just about the drone threat, but about Earth. He included Kyle's testimony, Lena's data crystal, and his own observations. At first, the collective responded with cold silence. Then slowly questions came, then requests for more information, then an official inquiry. The Qatari had not changed overnight, but a crack had opened in their old ways, and through it, light was getting in. One evening, Kyle sat with Vex and Lyra in the observation nook. The ship was heading toward Qatari home space, but not in a hurry. They had time. You never told us, Lyra said, what Earth's sky really looks like at sunset. Kyle smiled. It depends on the day. Sometimes it's orange, sometimes pink, sometimes red like fire, but always soft, like the world is breathing. Vex listened. We have no sunsets. Our homeworld orbits a red dwarf. The light is always dim. Then you've never seen blue sky, Kyle said. No, you should, Kyle said simply. Vex looked at him. Would Earth allow it? I think, Kyle said. After everything, they'd welcome you. A few days later, a priority message arrived from the Qatari High Council. Vex read it alone in his quarters. When he came out, his posture was different, straighter, but lighter. The council has approved a cultural exchange, he told Kyle and Lyra. They want to send observers to Earth, and they've named you, Kyle, as Earth's official liaison to the Qatari collective. Kyle blinked. Me? You speak both worlds, Lyra said. You understand silence and noise. Duty and kindness. You are the bridge. Kyle didn't know what to say. He had never wanted to be important. He just wanted to help. But maybe that was enough. The Zintra changed course again, not toward Qatari space, but toward the edge of human territory. Toward home, but not to stay. To connect. As the ship sailed on, Kyle stood on the observation deck watching the stars blur into streaks. He thought about the Odyssey, about his crew, about the long drift in the dark. He thought about the moment Vex chose to open the pod instead of leaving him to die. That one choice had started everything. Now, because of it, two worlds were reaching for each other. He didn't know what would happen next. The drones were still out there. Old fears still lived in both societies. Trust would take time, but it had begun. Lyra joined him at the window. She didn't speak. She just stood beside him, quiet, steady. After a while, Kyle said, Do you think they'll like Earth? Lyra tilted her head. I think they will like what Earth stands for. Gratitude, loyalty, hope. Kyle nodded. Yeah, that's it exactly. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. But inside the Zintra, something warm had taken root. Not an alliance built on weapons or trade, but on a simple act of kindness, and the courage to say thank you. The ship flew on, carrying its human and its Qatari crew into a future no one had expected. And for the first time in centuries, both species looked ahead not with fear but with curiosity, with trust, with the quiet belief that maybe, just maybe, the galaxy was big enough for everyone.